Welcome to another episode of Money Matters with Doug Jones. I'm Doug Jones. It's the personal finance show focused on moving you forward financially. So I have a question for the viewers. How many of you have received a phone call or been left a voicemail, reportedly from Canada Revenue Agency, telling you that there's a warrant out for your arrest if you don't get in touch right away? Or that call you get at 6 o'clock in the morning that's reportedly from a credit card company telling you there's been fraudulent activity on your credit card and you need to speak to them. I think many of us realize that those are fraudulent activities and ignore them. But clearly that's not everyone, because fraud is costing Canadians millions of dollars a year in losses. And so the focus of today's show is going to be on financial fraud and identity theft. And joining us, we have Jeff Thomson, who is a senior intelligence analyst at the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So before we get into sort of going over the types of fraud and how to protect yourself, maybe we could start with what it is you do each day and what the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre is.
Sure, yeah. I mean, the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre is run by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in partnership with the Ontario Provincial Police and the Competition Bureau of Canada. So we're a national intake dedicated to reducing fraud in Canada. So we receive complaints from the public and businesses across Canada and even worldwide through a toll-free number and online fraud reporting system. And then we use that information to provide support to investigations and operations. We use it to develop fraud prevention awareness messaging, and we use it for disruption. So if we know something can't be investigated, what steps can we take to reduce the fraud? Can we work with telephone service providers to block phone numbers? Can we refer financial information to banks to get accounts blocked? So we really use the information we capture robustly to help reduce fraud in Canada. That being said, the key thing is to know is that we're not an investigative body. Yes, we are police run, and we support investigations and operations, but we do not investigate at the Anti-Fraud Centre here.
Okay, well, thanks for that information. So I guess one of the things that I would like to explore is that March is Fraud Awareness Month. And so obviously fraud is a very, very prevalent issue. So why did Fraud Awareness Month start, and what sort of drove us to need a National Awareness Month for fraud?
Yeah, so Fraud Prevention Month, we're in the 17th edition, I think it is this year, and so it's been around for 17 years, and it was started by the Competition Bureau of Canada through the Fraud Prevention Forum. So the Competition Bureau of Canada chairs the Fraud Prevention Forum, and the idea of that was to bring together public and private sector partners to increase awareness about fraud. We knew fraud reporting was going up and continues to go up over the years. So the need for more robust education, prevention, and awareness messaging came about, and the idea of Fraud Prevention Month came about. So again, we're in the 17th month. This year's theme is the digital economy of scams and frauds. And this year, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, and the Competition Bureau have joined forces to create a month-long campaign designed to promote various awareness around various scams and frauds that are occurring across Canada.
And so how is that information going to get out to the public? It's a month-long campaign, so are we going to see online ads for it? Are we going to see radio? How are you going to get those messages out?
Really good question. So, given the pandemic, this year's campaign is focused largely on social media. So, we're having a Facebook Live launch on March 2nd, a 13-hour live launch. There's going to be daily Facebook and Twitter posts about various scams. At the same time, we've partnered with other federal departments. So, the CRA has launched Be Scam Smart campaign, Slam the Scam campaign. There are commercials and TV commercials around that campaign, and various departments have various initiatives ongoing. In Quebec, you have Fraud in 3D or Fraud in 3D. And then here with the Fraud Prevention Forum, our slogan remains Recognize, Reject, Report. So various slogans, various campaigns happening across Canada, and it's really about letting people run their own campaigns, develop their own messaging with the common theme of raising awareness around fraud.
But it's going to be through a lot of popular sites, as you said. So it's going to be online, Facebook, Twitter. There's going to be a lot of places where people can see that, which is, I think, important. So I was reading a statistic that said that the estimated fraud in Canada last year was just over $100 million. But then it also said that they only estimate that 5% of the frauds are actually reported, which would mean that it's about a $2 billion issue, which is huge. And so my question becomes, why are people reporting? Like, how do we get the mindset changed so that more reports are going to organizations like yours so you can educate the public on it?
Yeah, so the 5% rule is a conservative estimate, and it stems from a study done in 2008 and 2009 by the University of Masters on identity theft and fraud that showed that 13% of victims report identity theft and fraud to police, and under 1% actually report to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center. So we know at the Anti-Fraud Center that reporting rates vary from scam to scam. Reporting rates vary, and it's underreported because of the stigma associated with the fraud oftentimes. So the embarrassment, the shame, some people feel like they should have known better. It's only $200, it's only $100, they should have known better. Some people might feel like the police aren't going to do anything anyways. Fraud's difficult to investigate, and why bother reporting? So there's various reasons people don't report. And our slogan really tries to bring that out: recognize, reject, report. Reporting is really a key piece, because if people aren't reporting, we don't know what's happening. The information they have can be a missing piece of a puzzle. And again, we use the information robustly. So can we get phone numbers blocked, the emails shut down, bank accounts blocked? So it really is a collective effort and an integrated approach to reducing fraud, and it's really important to report.
Okay, that's great. So hopefully people are we're going to cover later on how do you actually report. So I'll come to that in a bit. But one of the other things I was reading is, I'm an accountant, so I'm a member of CPA. And I saw that CPA puts out some reports. And one of them was, I was just recently reading it, was that 73% of the surveyed people said that they had been approached on a fraudulent activity in 2020. So it just shows you how prevalent it is. But the more startling one to me was that a third said that they had actually been a victim of fraud at some point in their life. I had no idea that it was a third of the, effectively the population, which was huge. And so in reading it, it looked like people were sort of aware of certain types of fraud: credit card fraud, attempted identity theft, but there's not a lot of understanding of all the types of fraud, like what is phishing, what is spear phishing. And so I was wondering if you could sort of go through for the viewers sort of the top list of types of fraud that are occurring and how prevalent they are.
Yeah, for sure. So there's different ways to break down the data. So when we look at the reporting we get, and you think about the number of reports we get, so there's top reported scams. So in terms of top reported scams based on the number of reports, we see extortion scams, which is a very broad category, as the number one report, with nearly 12.5 million in losses and over 17,000 reports received in 2020. Whereas if we look at dollar loss, we see romance as number one, where there was only 899 reports and 18.5 million in reported losses. So there's different ways to look at what the top reported scams are. But so, if we focus on extortion right now, which is the one you framed right at the start of this call, is the calls from the CRA saying you'll back taxes. If you don't pay right away, you're going to be arrested, charged, deported, fined, etc. More recently, the variation is the Service Canada pitch, where they're saying it's Service Canada calling, you're implicated in fraud, your SIN number is implicated in fraud, you need to do exactly what we say, or else, right? So it's that coercive nature, that threatening call that you're getting, trying to extort the money out of you. And these extortion scams also take the forms of emails as well, where you can get an email claiming that you've been looking at illicit content online, you've been downloading illicit content. If you don't pay us right away, you're going to be charged. Ransomware is another form of extortion scams as well, targeting more the business sector, and again involving businesses having their computer systems locked down, and if they don't pay, they're not going to get their systems back. So there's various forms of extortion. And then if we go to the dollar loss side, again, the romance scams at number one, where fraudsters are creating fake ads or fake profiles online to solicit people into relationships, designed for people looking for love typically, and really playing on people's emotions to get them emotionally invested, which leads to higher dollar losses, right? So they create the fake ads, they solicit you into a relationship, they carry on that relationship for an amount of time to gain your trust, your affection, get you emotionally involved, and eventually the requests for cash start happening. And then the other big one we've seen in the past year, especially over the pandemic, is phishing scams. So you just mentioned it. So phishing scams are designed to solicit personal and financial information from victims. Their emails designed to look like they're coming from emails or text messages designed to look like they're coming from a legitimate institution, such as the government of Canada or a financial institution. And a common one we've seen is around the CERB benefit, right? So people getting text messages saying, deposit your CERB, click on the following link, right? So it's got the Government of Canada logo. You might even click on that link and it'll take you to a lookalike Government of Canada website. But then it's going to ask you to key in your usernames, your password, your bank account information, and a variety of personal and financial information. And just to sum that up, when it comes to being a victim of fraud, it's not necessarily financial losses that we're looking at here. So your personal information is a commodity. If you've provided personal information to fraudsters, they're also looking to gain that information. You're also a victim of fraud. So it's not just financial, they're looking for your personal and financial information as well.
Are there certain demographics that are more prone to some of these frauds?
Today, we say anybody can be a victim, right? A lot of people have cell phones today and devices that are connected to the internet. So, they're accessing their social media, their email. They always have a phone in their hands. So we know with the mass telephone calls, the CRA scams, they're calling just about anybody with a phone, right? So these are machine dialed scams. So it's a machine that's calling you, and they're starting at number 1 and going all the way through to number 99, right? So anybody and everybody can be a victim. This being said, we know there are disproportionate areas where we see increased dollar losses in say seniors, for instance. Mm-hmm. So they may be more targeted for certain types of frauds. But again, it can be anybody and everybody that's a target of a fraud today.
Yeah, that's what I sort of read, that it's going to be anyone, but I also had heard that seniors are more vulnerable to certain types of fraud. And so I'm assuming from what you're telling us that what makes them so successful is they're making threatening demands, and then they're trying to identify that they're coming from some sort of center of authority. Like you said, you put the Government of Canada website logo on it or something like that to make you think that they're legitimate.
Yeah, so they're very refined, so they're able to spoof or mimic legitimate organizations. And really the key to their success is playing on people's emotions, right? So when it comes to extortion, the emotion of fear. When it comes to romance scams, it's love, prize, elation. So scams are designed to evoke emotions, and when emotions come into play in decision making can become foggy, right? You may make rash decisions or decisions in urgency or panic, and they may not always be the best decision. So they're trying to get people to react as well.
Right. Okay. So that was a good summary. Thank you, of the types of scams that are out there. So we're going to go to break in a minute, but when we come back, what I'd like to do is actually get into how to prevent yourself from becoming a victim of the fraud, sort of things to look out for, sort of tips of the trade from you to help protect the rest of us.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
After a night out with your friends, not having a plan for a safe ride home can leave you in a bad spot. You could end up riding in a police car, an ambulance, or a hearse. These unplanned modes of transportation can be a costly choice and do not take you home. Your plan could include a designated driver, a taxi, or public transit. Drink responsibly, choose your ride, and have a plan for a safe ride home.
Visit arrivealive.org to find out more.
What kind of show do you want to see on Rogers TV? What interests you? Log on to rogerstv.com, fill out a show proposal, and tell us about your segment idea. We want to know what you want to see. Rogers TV, only on Rogers.
Welcome back to Money Matters with Doug Jones. In the first segment, we were going over that it's Fraud Awareness Month. We were going over some of the various types of fraud that are out there, and we're hearing how prevalent it is. We've heard the magnitude of the losses that Canadians are suffering. And so really the question now becomes, how do we protect ourselves? And we've got our expert, Jeff Thomson here, who is with the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, to help sort of guide us through things we should be looking for and some tips to try to protect ourselves as we go forward. So With that sort of lead in, Jeff, maybe you could start giving us some ideas on some of the things we should be looking for as to if we get those emails or we get that text message or we saw something on Facebook. What should we be looking for to protect ourselves, to sort of raise a flag that sort of says, maybe I should question this?
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, you're right. The first part here, we talked about recognizing fraud. And really, this comes back to our slogan, recognize, reject, report, right? So recognizing that the fraudsters are using every means at their disposal. They're on social media, they're on the internet, they're using text messages, emails, telephone. They're using every means at their disposal to solicit you with a potential scam. And so when we start to talk about the red flags and rejecting fraud, obviously the big indicator is the request for cash. But also there's always that request, it's always an urgent request or an emergency situation or a very coercive and a coercive request, I guess. It's where they're trying to invoke fear into you and get you to respond to the request. So rejecting is really about getting people to slow down, right? And as I mentioned earlier, take the emotions out of your response, right? So if you're buying goods online, doing your due diligence is really a big part of this. Slowing down, recognizing when a price of an item is too good to be true. So a lot of the online scams we see today, which really have proliferated during the pandemic, are goods that are greatly reduced in price, 80% off. For hair clippers, kids' toys such as Legos, clothing, UGG boots, Arc'teryx jackets, Canada Goose jackets. They're targeting all the brands with reduced prices, reduced offers for these goods. So you really need to do your due diligence and research what's the true market value of a good that you're buying or the item that you're buying. Are you on a legitimate website? What type of reviews can you find about the website or the seller offering the good for sale? And when you're online, always use a protected payment method to make your purchase. If you're going to pay for something online, we recommend using a credit card because they have built-in fraud protection policies. The other piece with rejecting fraud is developing routine practices, as you kind of alluded to. So, making sure your computer system's up to date, your antivirus software is up to date, that you're using strong passwords, unique passwords across different accounts. And again, not being afraid to say no, right? When that phone call comes in and they're saying you need to do this right away, you really have to slow down, say no, talk to family members and friends, engage other people and really do your research about what the solicitation or the request is.
Yeah, I was listening intently to what you were saying there, and in my day job, I'm a trustee. I help people with financial advice. And one of the things that I have discovered that I've discovered is there's a group of people that aren't trustees that sort of say they're offering you the advice, but what they are is they're just seeking payment and not actually giving the right advice. But they're doing all the things you're saying. They're offering, reduce your debt by 80% and preserve your credit rating, which of course doesn't actually happen. And so, but what they do is they get a lot of people to call them, and they get a lot of people to call with these sort of outlandish statements. They also do things like, we're a licensed company. Well, they're licensed to operate a business. So I think that's some of the things I was reading that people should be aware of is just because they have a website or that they say they're a registered company doesn't mean that they're actually able to provide the service that they're suggesting to you or that they're legitimate. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, again, the fraudsters are very sophisticated. They've really refined the scams to hide who they really are and what they're really up to, right? So from potentially using addresses of a legitimate company or using the name of a company that's very similar to a legitimate company to creating, fake emails and websites that look very legitimate and very professional. So they're very refined and capable of spoofing just about anything, right? Just in the phone calls from the CRA, they'll use the name agent or officer, right? Sort of give them that authority figure, right? Where people are more likely to trust an officer or an agent. So again, the scams are designed to invoke emotion, to get people to react and to part with their hard-earned cash. The other thing I'd like to point out too is that they're capable of and I guess I said it already, is really designing these emails and these websites to look like real websites. The serve benefit text message that I referred to, there was links that we saw where you clicked on these links and it brought you to a website that looked like the real Government of Canada website. So it's really important to independently verify, any websites or companies outside of the ad or the text message or email that you received. Open up your browser, go to the canada.ca to research what it is that you're looking for, say if it's serve benefits or any sort of government grant information, and really go to the right source, the legitimate source to confirm what you're looking for.
Right. So don't click on the link. Go through the proper channels to find the the site yourself. Yeah. And then
Exactly.
You also mentioned earlier about sort of checking them out. But one of the things I've discovered is testimonials aren't necessarily valid, right? Like I've seen companies that pay to get their employees to write testimonials. So I don't think you can just rely on the testimonials on a website as sort of a verification of how credible they are.
No, that's a valid statement for sure. Our colleagues at the Competition Bureau refers to that as astroturfing, where fraudsters or false, deceptive, misleading marketing campaigns will create the fake testimonials, as you've indicated. So in these cases, again, doing your research independently, searching a website with the word scam beside it in your search bar, right? Or fraud beside it, add some extra language in there and you might get some different results to see what the company's all about or if it's a legitimate website.
What advice do you have for the romance scam? How does the person who thinks they found love protect themselves in those scams? Because you can't go to an independent site and check it out.
Yeah, and in these cases, the fraudsters are really willing to spend time with the victims, right? To get to know them. They're going to become your life partner, your soulmate in a matter of months. Typically, they'll escalate the relationship to love in a very short amount of time. A lot of cases, they take you off the dating website to a different communication platform, WhatsApp, Google Hangouts. They'll ask for your phone number. They're available all the time to talk to you again. They really want to build up that trust and that emotional investment from you. And eventually, the key indicator is always the request for cash. So if there's somebody you've never met in person online, and you've only met them online, and they're asking for money for an urgent situation, certainly should be a big red flag, and we shouldn't be sending money to strangers.
Right. So that brings up to me the reporting it. So in order for your agency to have more information, how do people report to you? When they do report to you, what's the process you go through?
Right. Yeah. Reporting is again, a really key piece. Step one to reporting fraud is gathering all the information. I like to tell people to get a chronological statement of events of what happened. When did you get the phone call? Who did they say they were? What was the phone number involved? What was the pitch? Really create a nice statement of events of who, what, where, when, and what exactly happened. That really helps to report, because we know, as we mentioned, as we've already talked about, the fraudsters are becoming very sophisticated, very refined, and it's even getting difficult for us to sometimes to recognize some of these scams as the new twists come out. So if you create a nice, neat package, and then step two is going to be to call your local police, right? So fraud is a crime and it should be reported to your local police. They need to know about the crimes happening in their community. At the same time, if you haven't lost money or personal information, they'll likely refer you to report to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. So that's, you can report to us by calling our toll-free number at 888-495-8501 or online at www.antifraudcentre.ca, and centers the Canadian spelling, TRE, at the end. But the easiest way to report is online, especially if you haven't lost anything and you've confirmed that you're sure that you're involved in a fraud. We do get a high volume of calls here, and we are a small team. And as much as we'd like to answer all the calls, there's just so much fraud happening, we can't get to all the calls sometimes.
Okay. And so once you've got it, what are you doing with that data? Because you said you're not investigating. That's more of the police end. So what are you guys doing with the data?
Right. So as I mentioned, it can be a missing piece of a puzzle, right? So as police across Canada and around the world investigate these cases, we can use the data we capture to support these investigations. So it's linking various occurrences together, whether it be through phone numbers, names, addresses, Bitcoin wallets, or addresses that people have received from the fraudsters. So it's providing additional information to the police and law enforcement bodies investigating. Then we use it to develop fraud prevention awareness messaging. So if you're reporting something that we haven't heard about it, and so we can get the word out there to the rest of Canada and other Canadians to help reduce the fraud, right? So it's really about spreading the messaging, telling other people about it, and making sure we're getting the word out about new scams that are happening. And as I mentioned, the last piece, disruption. Again, we know not every fraud can be investigated. So what other steps can we take to reduce fraud? And this ties into increasing the cost of doing business for the criminals, right? So if we can get phone numbers blocked or shut down, or emails blocked or shut down, or bank accounts blocked or shut down, we really work with private sector partners to help to reduce the fraud and leveraging their terms of service, right? So service providers maintain the right to discontinue service if it's being used for a criminal purpose. And we try and give them that purpose, that reason, right? So you might want to go look at this phone number, or this email account. We've received a fraud report on it, right?
Okay, well, that's awesome. So I guess one of the things I think is a takeaway is, again, we're in this digital age. COVID made it even more so, where everything is done online, from our shopping to our banking to everything. So what are a couple of quick tips for people who are worried about shopping online, doing their banking online? How do you know that you've protected your personal data, your credit card's going to a legitimate site, that you're not on the wrong site? What are a couple of quick tips there?
Yeah, again, to really slow down, do your research. If you're shopping online, use a credit card or a secured payment method with fraud protection policies. Research the websites. When you're keying in personal or financial information, you want to make sure you're on an encrypted, secure connection. So you see that HTTPS or that little lock in your browser in a lot of cases. That's a key thing to look for sure. But yeah, it's really about doing your due diligence before you make that purchase. Knowing the true value of an item you're purchasing, and making sure it's not that too good to be true offer.
When we have various like passwords for various websites, and people say change them frequently. I got a list that's about 20 pages long, and I keep changing it. How do you recommend people keep track of that? Because obviously you want to make that in a secure place. You don't want to put that somewhere where someone can easily get it.
Yeah, using unique and secure passwords is really important, and usernames. Oftentimes we recommend coming up with some sort of passphrase, right? Something that's easy for you to remember, whether it's part of your dog's name and your address and telephone number. And you can change certain digits within that passphrase as you have to change them. Also, I mean, there's password managers out there today. As you've alluded to, there's so many websites and online accounts now that you got to keep track of. And it might be worth looking into some of the password managers that are available for sale.
Okay. Well, Jeff, we thank you very much for attending today and all the valuable insights that you've provided us. And I thank the viewers for joining us today on Money Matters with Doug Jones. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions for future shows, you can email us by going to the Rogers TV website and click on the homepage. And again, until next time, thanks for joining us, and goodbye.